So I go also by a medicine name called Sayana. I'm a curandera, which is also referred to as a plant medicine healer. Curandera is the Spanish word for plant medicine healer in the jungle. And so I've been trained in traditional healing lineages of the Amazon, where I lived for over 12 years, apprenticing with indigenous plant medicine healers of the Shipibo, the Achuar, and the Mestizo traditions. I founded a plant medicine center called the Avatar Center back in 2013. And for the past 9 years, I've been facilitating ceremonial retreats around the world, working intimately with sacred plant teachers such as ayahuasca, wachuma, and other plant medicines of the Amazon. We call them master plants. So my work bridges ancient healing modalities with spiritual guidance and modern embodiment practices. I'm also the co-author of my most recent book called Death of Duality, which was channeled in collaboration with a group of guides that I call the Ancient Ones. So as a medical intuitive and a channel, I continue to share their teachings through private sessions, online courses, and this is the excerpt of the talk I will share with you today. It's called The Cell as the Self. And so this course will be also, I'll be launching the Death of Duality course this fall. So this is my practice time to present this work that I've been cultivating over, I'd say, the last 6 years. From the plant medicine spirits that I work with in the jungle, my maestros in the jungle, which I refer to them as maestros, or teachers. Maestro is just the word for Spanish teacher. And so let's get into this now. So the cell is more than a building block of biology. It's a mirror of the self. With its membrane, we find not only the structure of life, but a sacred map of our consciousness, our identity, and inner complexity. Each component of the cell reflects a distinct aspect of who we are, offering insight into the pathways, patterns, and potentials that shape our lived experience. So this talk explores how the architecture of the cell, its organelles, membranes, and energetic dynamics reveals the intricate interplay between the seen and the unseen, the physical and the spiritual. So beneath the visible structure lies an atomic and energetic intelligence shaped by invisible variables, fields, frequencies, ancestral imprints, which inform the expression of both the body and the soul. So by learning to perceive the cell as a holographic reflection of the self, we unlock a profound framework for healing and integration. So the nucleus as the central intelligence becomes a metaphor for our inner guidance, systems and inner guidance system. So there's a whole system, reminding us that wholeness is not achieved by bypassing our parts, but by harmonizing them, bringing all aspects of the self into a conscious relationship and equilibrium. So the cell and the self is affected by the law of correspondence. And so this law teaches us, as within, so without, and as above, so below. So this universal principle reminds us that our outer reality mirrors our inner world. It governs not just what we experience, but the very structure of life itself, from the cycles of birth and death to creation, denial, healing, and illusion. And through this lens, the cell becomes a map of the self, revealing how we perceive, protect, and project. So when we explore the foundational layers of our being, we begin to see how our subconscious patterns shape our perceptions, our judgments, and the way we interact with others. And what we suppress, we often project, and what we deny, we often encounter as a reflection. So the self is not a fixed identity, but a vast constellation of intelligence, a living network of cells, consciousness, and memory, each part striving towards harmony. But when the protective structures within us begin to break down or grow rigid, we experience fragmentation. And that fragmentation shows up not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and energetically. And yet the body remembers how to heal. So the cells in their innate intelligence seek to reconnect, to restore unity within. But without a clear link to the soul's essence, without presence, remembrance, or truth, the cells may misfire. And so they loop in confusion or defense, and then healing becomes delayed. And this is why most traditions always say, look inward. And in doing so, we start to understand the self. We begin to reclaim the self. And in doing so, we unlock the pathway home to wholeness, coherence, and communion with our original design. Sorry to go here. So the 3 layers of the self. And so here it shows, it's a very basic understanding of how the soul in the center, and they're talking about the inner and outer layer that I'll be going into in the next portion. So the inner layer, this is all just about a reflection of what these parts of the cell are reflecting within our ancestry, within our soul's path, and our identity personas. Okay. And so the layer 1, here we go here. All right. So the first layer we will explore is the inner layer. So it is how our perception forms, which also serves as the protective layer. We can learn about our perceptions through the lens of our ancestry. So how we guard, defend, include, and exclude shapes our destiny, encoded within our familial line. So certain familial traits stand out while other remains hidden. And so this is an example, the most overt characteristics, such as following in your your father's footsteps to become a doctor. This doesn't need uncovering. This is obvious. But the secret traits passed down through generations form a deeper part of our identity in how we perceive others and ourselves. So the inner protective barrier within the cell wall creates this pathway of perception. There is an outer and an inner protective layer, and we are currently focusing on the inner one. So when the defense is internal, it affects how we perceive others. So this inner defense interacts with other faculties such as intuition, heightened feelings, and the fight or flight mechanism. And these foundational imprints create a sense of safety in which we exist. So the inner minor wall is created first within the cell wall, and that's also reflected in biology, laying the groundwork for the inner defenses that we manifest in this lifetime. For example, consider our relationship with life itself. Our protective mechanisms form biases, which lead us down pathways where we develop the capacity to endure and create tolerances. The perspectives we adopt reinforce these capacities. So, for example, in one's ancestry line, the drive for one's father or mother to become a doctor forms the foundation of one's perception, as it is one's perception of that pathway that one inherits, not as the form itself. So the outer wall, however, forms from our reactions, which shape our perceptions. External feedback from our family and environment shapes our inner defense system, creating our identity. So family members often react differently towards one another alone, and our reactions intensify with certain people or situations. Our soul's imprint informs how our internal defense mechanisms respond to external stimuli, shaping what we create in our outer world. In our outer wall, which we or others may associate with our identity. So these reactions may differ from those of our relatives, reflecting where we hold judgment and ignorance. And reactions that form our defenses can also indicate a lack of guidance in the ancestral line, preventing the growth beyond judgment and ignorance. So we're going to go now to the outer layer. And so this is the external layer of protection in the cell wall, which is inherited through the soul. And other people, such as Alice Bailey, talks about it as being the monadic channel, as it finds a way to flow through its life force beyond this current life's existence. Its function is to evolve the cell and the being, pushing beyond what it could withstand or draw from its inheritance in this life. So the inner and outer layers of the cell membrane relate to each other, as do our ancestral lineage, and this is where I bring up, and our past lives. So they form cohesion through the mitochondria. So there it can either strengthen the cell's outer layer or weaken it. So this is how the inner layer plays a part in how it has been internalized, its defense systems, as a way of how it perceives itself as the self. So the outer protective layer becomes a blueprint shaped by one's thematic experience and drawn from what one perceives as accurate. It creates one's perceptions and narratives about how to help oneself, and often it's done through defense mechanisms. So the protective layer also influences the people we choose to surround ourselves with. Experience shape characteristics, manifest within the soul's field, and then infuse DNA and cellular memory. So these pathways contain aptitudes and ineptitudes and stories that create specific abilities, or they can be turned off in some other places. So when the soul resides in a body for some time, it develops characteristics held in the vessel where its cellular memory resides, and those shaped by the environment that reinforces these experiences. So the likes, preferences, interests, perspectives, and tendencies. And whether you follow a dream that was yours or your father's or a distant grandmother's, all are embedded in the layer of your being. And when we clear these lines, it's not about dismantling them, but about purifying the passageway. So this is the work that we do with Amazonian plant medicine and ceremonies, is we purify the passageway. We're not dismantling it or creating other ways, we're opening. So in this pathway's process, we connect with you and others, sorry, you connect with your authentic essence. There we go. That's my energy had to come up a bit more. I had to become more authentic right now with my talk. And see your ancestry's more authentic essence. So you begin understanding the aptitudes, stressors, and perspectives created over generations. And so focusing on a specific pathway in a family member, such as like discrepancies, feelings, or experience the triggers, the reactionary states that come up when you're around them, can identify the clearing needed in that lineage. So recognizing, what the gift was and is for your life can bring much clarity, or in your patients' lives. So ancestors never intended their experiences to become a curse or addiction or a source of pressure, causing tense perspectives. At one point, these experiences help them adapt, survive, or even thrive within their circumstances. And when viewed through the lens of greater awareness, we can understand that even when we perceive as suffering in our lineage, has it been infused with love in some form. So the key is to see this through a broader perspective. And this is what shamanism and the plant medicine that we work with in the jungle does. So this outer layer contains the imprints of perception. Sorry. I'm trying to match the slides with the presentation, and we're just going to clear that. So we're going to go into layer 2 now. All right. So a little bit about the outer layer, and this, wait a minute. So the outer layer contains imprints of our perception. So themes and patterns from past lives can be stored within the physical body. And this is from just 13 years of experience with people, working with people ongoing in the jungle through the way that we work with our plant medicine diets. This was not something that even the work I've done like past with a medical intuitive and hypnosis. This has been a very reoccurring theme with past lives that I've encountered with hundreds of people doing these plant medicine dietas, is these memories that come and surface and see how these imprints have affected them. So they can be stored in the physical body, and they manifest as pain, discomfort, and conscious thoughts, and emotional and behavioral patterns. These imprints exist within both the collective unconscious and the identity archetypical layer of the cell. However, it is essential to note that not all patterns drawn from past lives are imprints that derive from harmful experiences. Just as shadows can persist, so can the light of positive experiences. So the same dynamic operates across the spectrum. So it's both. So often we remain unaware of our beliefs until familiar circumstances trigger them, and situations that feel strangely familiar yet are unconsciously forgotten. So this interaction highlights the intricate interconnection between all beings, so each serving the growth and development of the other. And this way, we are all reflections of one another. Understanding past life experiences can sometimes illuminate the path to unlocking one's most significant spiritual gifts. And these gifts may have been sensed or experienced in fleeting moments, but remained elusive and perhaps not nurtured or fully understood. So past life memories might explain why a particular gift that you or others might carry seem to slow to develop, and others appear to achieve mastery with just greater ease. So some of these past life patterns are most significant than others, reappearing in one's current life with particular frequency and intensity. We must address these recurring patterns, acknowledging their validity and role in our lives. And by doing so, we can learn to embrace authenticity and, just as importantly, unlearn how we have been inauthentic. So plant medicines such as ayahuasca, wachuma, and traditional Amazonian plant dietas help unlock these memories that have formed the cell membrane of the inner and outer layer. So the inner and outer layer are the defenses, highlighting where healing, strengthening, and activating is needed within the cell to bring the self as the cell into harmonic balance and enable oneself to attune to the soul's design. So there are many master plants in the Amazonian jungle where one receives treatment with these plants in a very specific container in order to connect the person with the spirit of the plant to not only heal the physical disorder, yet teach the person how one perceives and connects to these aspects of the cell as the self. So the second layer of the cell is the archetypical layer, also referred to as being the identities that we carry within ourselves, where spiritual infusion takes place. So within this layer, archetypes and the vast terrain of the collective subconscious emerge. Some traditions suggest that past lives are not merely personal, but part of a shared experience that resonates with the archetypical energies imprinted within the collective. So here, various archetypes take form: kings and queens, saboteurs, victims, saviors, martyrs, goddesses and gods, each with their distinct quality. So this space bridges the protective layers to the core, the nucleus of our being. So the collective consciousness and our immediate environment significantly influence this realm. So we house our narratives, our abilities, our preferences within this collective space. And here we manifest a collection of archetypes we outwardly express. Furthermore, the second layer recalibrates or reverses the archetypes we display, revealing areas that require balance in our experience. So many venture into realms of fantasy within the interior of this layer, of the second layer. which may lack a firm connection to the other aspects of the self. Yet these realms can also serve as conduits for the soul's evolution, guiding it towards new and unexplored territories. So mitosis, cell division, occurs within the cell layer, birthing new cells and enabling regeneration. And when the soul aligns with this layer, its higher nature, this process becomes immensely fruitful, as its protective mechanisms support rejuvenation. However, more often than not, this layer replicates older stories, those long embedded within the archetypes we have inherited. And these old narratives usually perpetuate themselves, revalidating past patterns and hindering the soul's evolutionary journey. So this space allows for revisiting and reimagining the original themes of these stories. So by confronting and transforming the narratives we believed were set in stone, we can rewrite them and create new timelines that allow us to feel a greater sense of belonging, fulfillment, and alignment with our higher purpose, which is a major cause that we see is the reason for illness and disease, are these reasons, are these factors, especially with belonging and aligning with our own higher purpose in our life. So judgment is one of our most significant defense mechanisms. Inner and outer, creating ignorance as its polar opposite. And this is within the scale of duality that I talk a little bit more about in my book. I'm not going to go much into it in this talk. So when we judge, we essentially isolate a framework of perception within a defined time-space continuum, which limits our understanding of who and what someone truly is. So at the exact moment judgment occurs, in the same space, ignorance arises as well within, or rather a denial of the space of all other possibilities from ignorance. So judgments cannot hold as higher truths within this infinite flow of the time-space continuum, because that continuum is spiral in nature and it's ever evolving. And if time and space were linear or circular, judgment might work. But the true nature of time and space is infinite. And while our mindsets are not, our perception and the time-space continuum are intricately woven. So we experience duality in this reality. And when we identify within this layer with the perception of ourselves or another as being the whole part of ourselves, we become polarized, which is mirrored internally in the cell, creating a larger distance between the nucleus of the cell and the defenses, as the second layer, the Maya, inside the archetypical layer that I've identified in this one, enlarges. So let me go here to the nucleus here. So the nucleus of the cell is what my guidance and the plant spirits call the seat of enlightenment. It is the spark of life, the electricity that breathes vitality into the cell. The nucleus is not separate from the cell. It is the cell. It is the origin of the other layers and the foundational core from which all aspects of the cell arise. So it cannot be in danger, for it exists eternally in union with the Creator, the source of all life. It never dies, it merely evolves and expresses itself in ever-changing forms, continually creating anew. So the nucleus's vibratory frequency is extraordinarily high. And if one could perceive it, one would witness the sacred geometric patterns within the nucleus, transmitting information as frequency to the rest of the cell, a reflection of its higher divine nature. So there are sacred geometric patterns that are in the cell that are probably not being able to see through our lenses because of our physical matter and how we've been created in this third dimension, but in other dimensions we can see them. And so these sacred geometric patterns form the essence of all symbols of the elements, and which is probably a lot of you learned about Chinese medicine and all the elements, understand that there's all these sacred geometries that are connected with the various platonic solids. And so each new life forms births a new structure. So each new life form births a new structure and element and a new sacred geometry that holds the vitality of the life it sustains. So this geometry weaves itself into the very fabric of our beings. And so this is in this space, that energetic space, is where time and space converge as one. And there is no past or future. And if one is experiencing something, it's available in the now. So whether it's your past lives or something that's happened with your family line or ancestral line, when you get into that space, all that it's all right here and exists here and now in that space. So in its purity, the nucleus has the power to grow and form new alliances within the cell structure when given focused attention. It holds the power to create worlds, and more significantly, it makes our world, creates your world. So when we withdraw attention from the nucleus over time, its brilliance fades and becomes obscured by neglect. And when we surrender our power to external forces, the nucleus vibratory rate decreases, forming relationships within the cell that ripple outwards and influence significant dynamics of existence. So this reduction in vibratory rate manifests in cycles, affecting the protective layer and the archetypical layers of the cell. And so the first layer of protection feeds into the second layer of archetypes, guiding how we relate to others through attitudes, behaviors, and value systems. So the process of self-discovery begins in the first layer, where we unravel the narratives that shape our beliefs and responses. And so this inner reconciliation is what our soul seeks above all else. So our past life narratives frequently shape the dynamics of our current relationships, and we unconsciously assign ourselves roles within archetypical patterns such as victim, abuser, rescuer, savior, martyr, or there's so many. There's many other ones that we've cleverly created for ourselves. So these archetypes are often rooted in the second layer of the self, where the Maya, so this is the illusion aspect, but there's two parts to this, of course, in this duality spectrum. The illusion of separation arises. And so they emerge as responses to life's challenges and function as defense mechanisms crafted within the protection layer of our being. So in this context, Maya is not merely an abstract concept, but an active force that weaves complex narratives around these archetypes. And it perpetuates cycles of shoulds, have tos, feeding fears disguised as security. So this illusion pulls us away from love, exploration, and evolution into a cascade of stories, superstitions, and judgments that shape our decisions, influence our relationships, and determine how we spend our precious time here on Earth. So a distorted narrative can feel overwhelming because it saturates the second layer of the cell far beyond its natural capacity. And so, a distorted narrative means that something that's not aligned, someone doesn't really truly believe, their heart isn't in it, they're not aligned in it, but they continue to perpetuate that story because of certain archetypical identities that they've created out of defense they felt protected by, whether it be a victim mentality or a savior mentality, because really not one, all of these rest on duality, all these archetypes, there's not one that's better than the other, because eventually they just go back and forth. And so this is what I'm talking about when it says distorted narratives. So as a result, the vibratory frequency of the nucleus, the seed of the soul, diminishes. And this disconnection can explain why even the most creative, powerful people can be very susceptible to manipulation. So when the protective layers are fragmented, we lose touch with our authentic story, really. And the authentic story is really the nucleus of the cell, the soul, where it's kind of shaping and it has that power to be able to inform all the rest of the parts of the cell. allowing external, and so this, when that happens, allowing external influences to shape our identity. So that's when we allow whatever information is coming in, social media or other people, to shape how we see ourselves. And so within these same protective layers lie the key to healing. So we make ourselves whole by turning inward, exploring our narratives, and facing the shadows we carry. So this inner work dissolves the unconscious patterns in the second layer, reducing Maya's grip and restoring balance. And so at its core, the soul's quest is simple yet profound: to remember its brilliance. The nucleus within each of us holds an innate capacity to radiate light so powerful that it can heal itself in anything it touches. So the soul is not isolated. It is an interconnected thread woven into the fabric of all of life, intrinsically linked to every being, creature, and element on earth. However, the soul must clear and heal its protective layers to fully ignite this brilliance. So when Maya is balanced, it shifts from an illusion of separation to a powerful force for creation. And in its positive polarity, Maya is the canvas where we envision and manifest new realities aligned with our soul's purpose. So the inner protective layer of the cell, inherited from our ancestors, can cleanse itself. So this process begins when we confront the judgments we hold about our lineage, our inherited traits, and even the parts of ourselves we struggle to accept. So judgment breeds ignorance, creating resistance that prolongs karmic cycles. So when we release these judgments, we reclaim the space they occupied. So there's an energetic space that's created when we have a judgment. And many of curanderos and people we work with in the jungle, as well as myself, is seeing it energetically. It creates a space. It takes up a space within our framework of our being, in ourselves, these kinds of judgments. And so this is when we release those energetic judgments, then there's more space. There's more space to work within the soul, and we reclaim it, allowing the natural flow of healing to resume. And so on the physical level, the mitochondrial function increases when we fast for periods of time, and when we feel clear, less rigid, and more open to life. This is a powerful example of when we do not use the defenses of the cell over periods of time. The pressure for the second layer within our identity lessens in its tendency to polarize within dualism and the nucleus. The soul becomes more brilliant then, and thus hearing ourselves and others with more clarity. So this is the way of working with plant medicines in the Amazon and healing the self, is to connect with the spirit of the plant, as it also has the ability to work within the context of the cell as the self, and how it connects to these pathways as ways of instructing the cell as the self to work in a way that is harmonious to all parts of the cell. And so to heal the self is to heal the parts of the cell connected to the vastness of the soul that has created them to learn and evolve. So this is the template it gave to all of us, to connect it to all of nature, as nature has the same template. We are nature. It's true. And when we heal the defenses that we had created against our own nature, as it's not reconcilable with these pathways of the soul and one's ancestry, when we do that, we harmonize with all of life. And in conclusion, the inner protective membrane layer shapes how we perceive and judge ourselves and others. And by understanding these defenses and recognizing the ancestral patterns from which they arise, we begin to transcend judgment and ignorance, ultimately fostering deeper connection and healing. So this awareness is the first step towards creating healthier relationships with ourselves, our family, and the world. And I also will be offering a course this fall, as well as I'm continuing on these retreats that I do this summer's, as well as our place in Peru and also Costa Rica. And yeah, you can connect in with me if you want to go to this page, free guide, the guide.channel the ancients. And I think that's it.